I built up the courage to ask my girlfriend to include another girl during the deed. Asking her for another girl to join was the worst decision of my life. I shouldn't have done it on Valentine's Day of all days, but I did, and there's no taking that back. It was this time last year when my wife said, "Happy Valentine's Day, honey. I've got a surprise for you tonight." To which I replied, "Is it a threesome?" I was serious, and she knew it, partly because of my facial expression and partly because it wasn't the first time I'd asked. But in hindsight, Valentine's Day was probably not the best day to bring it up again. She had never been super receptive to the idea, but she never ruled it out either. Which is why, when she came home from work later that night and offered up a threesome, I was pleasantly surprised. "You were right earlier. My surprise is a threesome," she said with a seductive smile. "Really?" I replied. "Yes, best wife ever. Which is why I got you these," I said, handing her a bouquet of flowers and a card. "Happy Valentine's Day." "Oh, happy Valentine's Day," she said, kissing me. Looking back at it, I'm not even sure why I wanted a threesome in the first place. My wife and I had a perfectly great sex life, just the two of us, and logistically, 3 people just sounded complicated. But I had never done it before, and it was one of those things I wanted to check off my bucket list. So, who are you thinking? For the girl? The third? I asked. "That's a surprise," she replied. "Surprise? Yeah. For when? Now. Now. Yeah. Be ready to head out in 15 minutes. Suddenly, my heart started racing, and goosebumps covered my body. It's happening. It's finally happening, I thought to myself, and very soon, I ran to the bedroom to pack whatever it was that one brings to a threesome, but was immediately stumped. Looking around the room for condoms, I realized that after having been married for a few years, I wasn't going to find any. So I settled on a bottle of cologne and my sexiest boxer briefs, threw them into a backpack, and waited patiently by the door. "Wow, I've never seen you so excited to leave the house," my wife pointed out as she slung a larger-than-normal purse around her shoulder. "What did you pack?" I asked with a flirtatious smile. "Oh, you'll find out soon enough," she replied, teasing me back. "Now, what are you waiting for? Get in the car." I did as she asked, letting myself into the car and hopping into the driver's seat while she locked up the house. "Where to?" I inquired as she finally got in. "The motel," she said, typing its name into the car's GPS. "Really? That place not romantic enough?" I should have noticed the way that she said it, but I was too excited, too distracted by what was to come to pick up any nuances in her voice. About 20 minutes later, we arrived at the motel, my wife checking in on our behalf and picking up the keys. When we stepped inside the room, I was half expecting there to be someone inside, a woman of my wife's choosing, lying on the bed, waiting for us. But when we turned on the light, it was just an empty motel room. A small, run-down, divvy motel room. My wife must have noticed my look of judgment. "Don't judge a book by its cover. For what we're doing, only the bed matters," she said as she closed the door behind us and locked it. "She'll be here any minute." Just hearing those words got me excited. I ran to the bathroom to freshen up, and by the time I stepped out, my wife had already let in our guest. Our third, there, sitting at the foot of the bed in nothing but lingerie, was a blonde-haired woman who was in the midst of kissing my wife. Hearing me step into the room, they both stopped and turned back to look at me. "By all means, don't stop on my account," I said, but it was too late. My wife took a step back from the woman and sat down in a chair beside the bed. "No, you two first. I want to watch," I thought to myself, while at the same time bricking it, nervous that after fantasizing about this moment for years, I wouldn't be able to perform. The woman took me by the hand and guided me to the bed, where she rolled me onto my back, hopped up on top of me, and began to kiss me. It was around this time that I sensed my wife was moving around the room behind us, but I was much too turned on and much too distracted by what was happening to think too much of it. Then I caught a whiff of something. "What is that?" I wondered. But before I could look around to see what might be causing it, the woman tore off my shirt. That's when my wife crawled into bed, now also wearing lingerie, and whispered into my ears seductively, "Is it everything you wanted?" "More." "We've barely even started," I whispered back flirtatiously before hearing 3 clicking sounds. "Click, click, click. Tell me about it," she said with a smile, before I noticed that she was wearing something around her wrist, something larger and heavier than a bracelet. They were handcuffs, latched from each of her wrists onto that of the woman's and that of mine. "Oh, sh*T. I thought to myself as I went to reach out for my wife, but heard another sound. Clack! It was the sound of metal hitting wood, in this case the sound of the handcuffs on my other wrist as they caught on the wooden bed frame and prevented my arm from moving any farther. Even kinkier, I thought to myself. But then I noticed something. A look of concern in the blonde woman's eyes, a look of fear as she surveyed the room and began to scream. I followed her gaze to the floor where I saw what looked like an empty gasoline can and a trail of gas, and then my wife dropped something, a match, and the trail of gasoline went up in flames. "What are you doing?" I screamed at her, attempting to hop out of bed. Clack! My handcuffs caught on the bed frame again. "You wanted a threesome? Here's your threesome," my wife called out, her face turning from flirtatious to ominous. A steamy, hot, scalding threesome. "Honey, let us go," I yelled. "I can't do that," she muttered. Meanwhile, our third continued to scream. "Let me go." "Why not?" I replied to my wife. "Because you wanted this, honey. Where are the keys to the handcuffs?" That's when she held out her hand and showed me all 3 keys before tossing them over her shoulder, far beyond anyone's reach. "Why did you do that? What is wrong with you?" "Because my husband wasn't satisfied. Satisfied with me. Satisfied with us." Around that time, the fire began to spread to the bed, and the blonde woman attempted to run away. But with her wrist latched onto my wife, who was latched onto me, she was only able to make it a few feet away from the bed. And then I began to feel a burning sensation, which grew hotter and hotter and hotter. All 3 of us, even my wife, began screaming and crying at the top of our lungs as the flames overtook the bed. Smoke filled the room, and we all began coughing. It was in that moment that I saw my life flash before my eyes. I thought I was going to die in that motel room that night, handcuffed to my wife and a woman I didn't know, until suddenly motel workers came bursting in through the door with fire extinguishers and quenched the flames that were enveloping us. But by the time they saved us, the damage was already done. Our skins seared by the flames, each of us writhing in pain. I must have blacked out at that point. But when I awoke, I found myself in the hospital, bandages covering the entirety of my body, in an indescribable amount of pain. I never spoke to my wife or the poor woman she had hired to participate in the targeted attack again directly. Anyway, a year later, with Valentine's Day just a few days away, I'm lucky to be alive. But I'm still left wondering, what was my wife's surprise after all? All I know is if I ever love again, it's safe to say that on Valentine's Day, I'm never going to ask for that again.